Dr. Charles McPherson. Born in Joplin, Missouri, Dr. McPherson moved to Detroit at age 9 and started playing the saxophone, developing in a rich Detroit music scene alongside such great musicians such as Barry Harris, Lonnie Hillier, Roy Brooks, Donald Walden, Louis Hayes, as well as future Motown legends and members of the Motown House rhythm section, bassist James Jamerson and drummer Richard Pistol Allen. After moving to New York in 1959, Dr. McPherson began his association with Charles Mingus, which lasted for the next 12 years. He has performed on over 70 recordings to date, both as a leader and as a sideman. He's performed and recorded with many jazz greats, including Pepper Adams, Nate Adderley, Randy Brecker, Jackie Byard, Wynton Marsalis, Clifford Jordan, Tommy Flanagan, the list goes on. It's truly a wonderful, wonderful resume of performances. In 1998, Dr. McPherson was featured in the soundtrack to the Clint Eastwood film Bird as the saxophone voice of Charlie Parker in several scenes. In 2015, Dr. McPherson was awarded an honorary Doctorate of Fine Arts degree from California State University at San Marcos. In 2016, he was joined by drummer Albert Tootie Heath in receiving the Don Redman Jazz Heritage Award. Most recently, in 2017, Dr. McPherson was the recipient of the Duke Award from Soka University. Dr. McPherson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that very nice introduction.
I discovered you. I'm a Berkeley graduate. I went to Berkeley in Boston, and I actually never studied jazz until I actually went to college. I was just your average guy in a rock band who listened to the Beatles. But once I discovered jazz, I really fell in love with it. But it took me a very long time, maybe that's just the way the scene is nowadays, to discover true bebop playing and Charlie Parker and Bud Powell and Barry Harris. And through them, I actually discovered you, Dr. McPherson. And what a wonderful discovery. Great music. And it really, for me, I guess it began with Charlie Parker, and it was very similar for you, right?
Yes, very much so. I started playing saxophone when I was 13 years old. I played trumpet before that, at 12. And then at 13, I got a saxophone and an alto. And not long after that, I discovered Charlie Parker. And then I wanted to know everything about Charlie Parker. And I wanted to know everything about that particular kind of jazz, which, is bebop. And in those days, they called it bebop, and sometimes they called it progressive jazz or modern jazz. But those were the terms being used to describe the particular genre of jazz that people like Charlie Parker played, Dizzy Gillespie.
I listened to you in another interview, and you actually met Charlie Parker when he came to Detroit to perform. Is that correct?
Yes, I did. I met Bird. I was about 15, and he came to play at a ballroom in Detroit with a Detroit local rhythm section, and they were more swing guys. They weren't really the bebop guys from Detroit. They were more swing-like, which was fine. It was great. Charlie Parker sounded beautiful, and I met him, and I was very young, and I asked him many questions, and he was very nice and approachable.
Can I actually ask, what kind of questions did you ask him, and do you remember what he said to you?
Yes, I do. I remember everything. I asked him about the reeds that he used on his saxophone. I wanted to know what kind and what was the number of the reeds, the strength of the reeds. And I found out he used a brand called Roy Mayer, which were like Rico reeds, made by the same people, and he used number 4, which is kind of a stiff reed. And the horn he played at that time was a King Super 20, I think. And so I asked him, I did ask him, when did he start, how long has he been playing? And I can remember him telling me he had been playing 15 years.
Wow.
And that's when I talked to him. And at that time, I'm like a kid, and I'm thinking, wow, 15 years is a long time. He's been playing a long time,
How old was he at that? Do you know
he
how
was
old?
Probably 33, 34. And And then now, of course, when I think back, that Charlie Parker, when I met him, had been playing only 15 years. It's incredible, really.
He must have condensed quite a bit of playing in those 15 years.
Well, he definitely, he came along, his generation, and also where Charlie Parker was from. It all makes sense that a player like Charlie Parker would emerge from that time period in that area of the United States, which was, Kansas City during the 30s. And the musical scene in Kansas City was wonderful for musicians because there were many, many clubs. All of them had live music in them. And so it was attractive. The city of Kansas City was very attractive to musicians from all over the United States because it was such a fertile musical environment because of the many, many clubs. And so there were great saxophone players and clarinet players that lived there. And Charlie Parker is just a kid growing up in that kind of environment. And so when he started playing music, he had some of the greatest players in the world right there that he could go out and see, look at them play, hear them play, and learn from that. And people that, that taught him, he started, playing with some of those bands, and some of the people that taught him were excellent musicians.
You mentioned in an interview you started around 12 or 13. So when you talked to him, you had already been playing a couple of years.
Yeah, I'd only been playing a couple of years, but I knew who he was, and I was into him.
And at that point in time, how developed were you?
Well, I could play. I knew all my I knew scales, and I could play very simple tunes. But I could barely do that. I mean, it wasn't like I knew, because at that time I didn't know a lot about harmony and theory. I just knew the scales. I did know all my major scales and minor scales, but I didn't know about theory and harmony and dominant sevenths and and all of the things that you must know. I didn't know much about that, and that's when I connected with Barry Harris.
Did you meet Barry after meeting Charlie Parker?
Yeah, I met Barry around the same time that I met Charlie Parker. And Barry lived in my neighborhood. He lived literally, 2 minutes from my house. And he was working at a jazz club called the Bluebird, which was on my street, just a couple of blocks down the street from where my house was. And that was a very good local jazz club that had great local jazz musicians playing in that club. People like Barry Harris, Thad Jones, Pepper Adams. Miles Davis stayed in Detroit for about 2 years during that period. So it was very good for Detroit, which that would be the early 50s, like the 53, 54, And I was like 15 or so, 14, 15, 16,
I absolutely love bebop. I think bebop is just probably, to me, the most modern kind of jazz because it's just truly improvisation at its finest. And you come from that tradition, and I think, and you're so authentic, and you play so well. I want to get into your compositions in a minute, but just to quickly finish up on your childhood development here. You mentioned your minor and your major scales, and later when you were working with Barry, you were with a friend, Mr. Lonnie Hillier. Was he a good friend of yours at the time?
Yeah, Lonnie Hillier was my age, a little couple months younger than I, and he lived in the same neighborhood that Barry and myself lived in. So we were in the same neighborhood, and we both would go over to Barry's house in the afternoon. Barry would work at this jazz club I told you about called the Bluebird,
Right.
which was in our neighborhood also. In the afternoons, Barry would be home and he would practice, all day long. And there were musicians always coming in and out of Barry's house in the daytime.
In that period, that really fertile period, what were you working on at that time? What were you trying to get together?
Well, then, yes, this is when I started learning about harmony and theory from Barry, because I sat in at the club one Sunday afternoon. Lonnie, the little trumpet player, my friend, we sat in at a jam session at this local jazz club, the Bluebird. And Barry heard us, and he was impressed to some degree. But he could tell we didn't really know much about a theory and harmony. And he volunteered to show us. If we came by his house, he would show us a few things to get us started. And so I started coming by his house, and so did Lonnie. And so this is when I learned about chords and how harmonic movement works, at least in Western music. I learned these things, and then I knew how to use the scales, and I finally was able to navigate in that world of harmony and theory. And so I got it, and I studied very hard. I practiced every day for hours.
How many hours did you practice?
I would say I was still in school. I was going to high school at that time. So I was able to probably get in 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day. Yeah, every day.
How did people learn tunes back in the day? I mean, they didn't have fake books, right? Did they take it from other people, right, or did they learn it from the records? Or how did it go about happening?
Both. We learned it from the records. We learned it from older musicians, and we learned them. And there weren't fake books like there are today, but there were books around with all of the standards, all of the American standards in them. So there were fake books. But nowadays, fake books not only have standards, but they also have the jazz tunes.
Can you remember, what was a really difficult song for you back in the day? Was there a particular song that you found difficult to navigate the changes, or?
Well, yeah, a lot, yeah. Yeah, I did. A lot of the bebop music was hard, intricate, because the bebop players played a lot of notes. A lot of notes, and some things were pretty fast, tempos. So it was hard to, and so we didn't have any books in those days. Now there were no Omni books, Charlie Parker books, or
right.
John Coltrane books. That we didn't have that. So if you wanted to learn a solo, say, for instance, Charlie Parker solo, you would have to get that off of a LP, off of a record. There were 33 1/3, the big 12-inch LPs that they had in those days, and you would have to slow it down from a 33 1/3 to a 16 RPM. And so that's almost half, but you're in a different key than the original key because you've slowed the spin.
Is there a song that you remember where you did that too?
It was let me see, like blues, a lot of like Charlie Parker blues, like it would be like Cool Blues. That's a Bird tune called Cool Blues. Tunes like Confirmation, which is also a Charlie Parker tune, and pretty doggone tricky also. And so this is the way we would have to learn solos and transcribe solos, because we did that also to some degree, to learn them. And so it was hard because you were out of tune. Now, because you had to do it this way, this was one way that we learned how to play in different keys. See, because you had no choice. So if I wanted to copy or transcribe a Bird solo, instead of it being in C, it might be a half step down, which is a harder key,
Dr. McPherson, do you have perfect pitch?
No, I don't have perfect pitch. I don't think so, but I have good relative pitch.
Relative pitch, right.
Yeah. And sometimes I can nail it. I mean, it's almost, some of it's psychological. Sometimes I can nail it right away, but I would not say I have perfect pitch.
Just the fact that you don't have it just goes to show that, like, if somebody without perfect pitch can sound as good as you, I mean, there's a lot of hope for all of us, you know?
Yeah, but I don't think Charlie Parker. I mean, I talked to Dizzy Gillespie, and I asked Dizzy, did Bird have perfect pitch? And he said no, I mean, he didn't think so, but he had great relative pitch and great ears. So perfect pitch, it's a perfect pitch. All music, great musicians, whether they're jazz musicians or whatever kind, classical, they having great ears is definitely a thing that's that is really a must.
And is it true that you guys used to sing all these lines all the time? Like, would you sing and hum lines?
Yes, we definitely did sing.
Was there a phrase that if you can hum it, you can play it, something like that?
Oh yeah, I can sing pretty much anything I play. You know what I mean? I can sing the pitches correctly.
There's a recording that you did. I think it was Bebop Revisited in 1964. It was a cover of Bud Powell's Whale. Now that's very tricky. I mean, all of them are tricky. All the bebop songs are tricky.
Yeah. The tunes are tricky.
Tricky. A lot of chromatics. A lot of things going on. And so do you all have to hum that correctly, right?
Well, it's good to be able to do it. I mean, it's good. Some people are better at that than other people. But as a musician, you should be able to be able to sing the intervals correctly. Because one note to another note, basically, you're playing intervals. And you know about music, right, Nick?
Yes. Okay.
At least, so so. a fourth interval is a fourth interval.
Right.
A third is a major third is a major third. These things have a certain sound, and there are intervals. Well, you should be able to hear that and play. And then most musicians are pretty good singers. Like Nat King Cole, the great pianist. The world knows Nat King Cole as a singer because he did that more than anything else, and he became very famous. But basically, he was a great jazz pianist.
Right,
player.
That's right.
That somebody told him to sing a song, at some club he was working in, and they started doing that. Well, and the rest is history.
What's your opinion on modes? And did any of the players when you were growing up ever talk about modes?
Well, we knew about them. I think people like Miles and even Mingus to some. Mingus sort of Mingus was doing things like that. So we, like modes, basically are old. Those are older than 2-5-1s. Those are the things that the Europeans were playing. In what 1600
Gregorian chant, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, Gregorian chants. That's older than a Bach and stuff like that. So we were aware of them, but I mean at that point we were not concentrating on them. The people who actually ended up being sort of bringing modes back were bebop people. So when you think of the players who actually started bringing modes back into the up to the in jazz. So who were they? Okay, so Miles Davis, he's a bebop player. He played with Charlie Parker. Okay, John Coltrane, he's a bebop guy. He's 6 years younger than Charlie Parker. These guys came up. They were grown men playing bebop when it was being first introduced by people like Charlie Parker and Dizzy and Monk. These players were basically bebop. They weren't Dixieland players. They were bebop guys. So the modes themselves that became popular and were popularized by people like Miles, you got to realize that came from somebody that's a bebop guy. So I'm saying that to say that the bebop musician knows about modes. It's just some of them didn't think that I'm going to dedicate all of my musical life to them. because that you can if you want to.
You personally, Dr. McPherson, do you think of modes at all when you improvise?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I play tunes that have some aspect of modal with in them. So my generation of bebop players are, we play modes sometimes and 2-5-1s and everything, But now, as a modal, I will say this, Nick.
Yeah.
In terms of what do I want to play 80% of the time, it's definitely not modes.
Right. That's
the modal way of thinking.
I watched a video on YouTube of Barry Harris, and he was just railing against modes. He was just saying like it's all kind of nonsense and stuff. And I was just kind of curious because you actually grew up and all the people around you. I was just kind of curious how people thought back in the day. It's really interesting that you mentioned that Mingus talked about it and that kind of thing.
Well, he did it,
Yeah.
Mingus did. Yeah, there were two, Mingus, I mean, if you go way back, Mingus in the 50s was, so he's Miles and those guys are not even the first to sort of do that. There were people like George Russell and different people were, because it's not like modes didn't exist or people weren't aware of them. It's just a matter of music is a thing where that you can just zero in on one aspect of it and make a whole musical life out of just one nuance of harmony and just be there and just never do anything else. You can do that if you want to. I mean, music and art sort of allows for that.
You mentioned in an interview, which was pretty interesting, you said there's an overemphasis on 2 and 4 nowadays, and I think your quote is, it's about the 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, the ups and downs and the in-betweens. Do you tap your foot? How do you tap your foot? I'm very curious.
Well, okay, when I tap my foot, it depends. If it's a ballad, like the quarter note is like 1, 2, 3, 4, then I think 4/4. I pat my foot in 4/4, 4 beats. If it's a medium, like a walking 4, for instance, where the quarter note is, I'll sing a bass line like so. Doom 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 doom. Okay, to me that's kind of a walking 4/4, about the pace of the average person's walk. I will plant my foot in 4 there. Now, at a certain point, when the tempo becomes a certain speed, I don't pat 4/4. I pat in 2. So I cut it in half. And when I cut it in half, I pat on 1 and 3. Some people pat on 2 and 4.
It feels more natural to tap on 1 and 3. That's my sense of it.
To me it does. Yeah, to me it does. It seems more natural. And also, I think a lot of people, like when they start learning how to play jazz and they're younger people, it's emphasized that 2 and 4 is this really important part, but it's not. It's no more. Here's what's important: it's the balance. More important than that, it's the balance of 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, and how the ups and down beats are distributed in the phrase, in the musical phrase. See, it's more of that.
I want to talk about your compositions in your discography. Let's start live at the 5 spot. You were a 27-year-old man, and now would it be fair to say that kind of period was a hard bop? Do you use that term, hard bop?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, I have no issue with using that term. I don't use it that much, not because I have anything against the term.
Right. Did people ever say that back in the day? Did they ever say hard bop?
Yeah, there were people, people like Art Blakey, his band was considered, in other words, after bebop, So you got bebop, the original period, Charlie Parker, Dizzy, Monk, the early, the beginning, the founding fathers of that bebop stuff. You got that. Yeah, because it's really Dizzy Gillespie, Monk, and Bird. And then you got, and then you have Bud Powell, who's kind of like the piano player that's in that. And then you got that whole Kenny Clark also, by the way, Kenny Clark, the drummer. Okay, those guys that were coming up to Menton's during that period were basically swing musicians, young swing musicians who were sort of developing something else, but not because they're deliberately trying to. It's just a very organic process. It just happened, you know. And then you got people like Miles, Sonny Rollins, Treen, who are younger, 6-7 years younger than Charlie Parker. They're like younger brothers in a way.
Let's talk about your album Live at the 5 Spot. Now, there's 2 compositions that you wrote. Just a quick question. Were you always writing songs, writing tunes when you were developing?
Yeah, sort of. Because, I mean, when you got record dates, you were supposed to have some standards on there and some originals. That was the template.
Could you talk a little bit about the tunes Suddenly, and there's a really nice bluesy tune, The Viper?
Yeah, The Viper. Well, The Viper was kind of my attempt to be simple and to be more, just come up with tunes that are more easily understood by the public, So that's how the intent was maybe not as pure, but this is what that was. But Suddenly was a tune, I just hear it in my head and then just, you develop it. You hear a little, 3 or 4, 8 bars of a little something that's going on inside your head. And then you just say, oh, let me develop that. And you start writing it down, and then it becomes a song or tune. So I remember that's on there. But we played a couple standards too, I think. And that was live, right? It was live at the 5 Spot.
Live at the 5 Spot.
Like that.
At 27, what kind of player did you assess yourself as?
Well, I just thought of myself as I do now, as a developing player. That
At 27, did you have a really fine sense of harmony by then?
Yeah, I think I was sophisticated. Yeah, I kind of knew what I was doing. Yeah, and I think I know more now, actually. But I knew. Let me see. I knew enough. I knew something. I was aware, and I could play the piano to some degree.
You can play piano?
Yeah, I can play the piano, but not really. I can't play fast, fast tempos. But I can, if it's slow enough, and because I don't have any technique. But I understand the piano. I know how to play chords and how to voice them, and I actually know more now than I did when I was 27.
You have your album in 1971, Charles McPherson. There's a song there, Serenity, which has some great arrangements and another kind of blues.
Yeah, I remember that was, it's a little bit of curveball harmonically. Basically it's a blues, but there's some areas in there where it's a little deviations, harmonic deviations, and
In the studio, what were you like telling yourself, okay, what am I going to go for with this album, which has my name? What was your state of mind at the time?
Well, my state of mind was pretty nervous. Record dates for me were pretty stressful in a way, because you're doing things and it's for posterity. It's there forever. So sometimes, unless you really learn how to relax in a studio, it can be a little bit stressful, just the process. But mainly you want to make a good record. You want a record that sounds good technically. You want a record where the musicians and yourself are playing the songs cleanly, distinctly, and then, most important of all, to play very insightful and creative solos on them.
Yeah, great album, and I really encourage everybody to check that out. So let's move on a little bit, a couple of years later, to Today's Man. And there was, I was really blown away by the arrangements here by an Ernie Wilkins. There's a tune there called Charisma, and I think it's a kind of a minor blues. Do you remember the working with Ernie and with getting the arrangements?
Yes, I do. And, Ernie, that was very interesting. Ernie, now at this time I'm living in New York, in Queens, and Ernie is living in Queens, in New York as well, and not that far from me. So we collaborated, and and his history. He's a wonderful saxophone player. He was, and a good arranger, and he did many arrangements for people. So he was the arranger on this date, and he was very good to work with. He was a very nice, warm person, which is nice, and he was easy to work with, and he's a saxophone player, so he understood, saxophone players, and he did a marvelous job. It was a fun project.
Really sounded great. I mean, it was really nice. What's your approach if you were teaching somebody a minor blues? What would you? Is there a good scale, like a fallback scale? That's
yeah. Well, that's different kind. A minor. You can play minor blues almost like like molds in a way. So let's say, for instance, who do you play? Do you play saxophone?
I'm actually a guitar player.
Okay, well then that works. Okay, let's just say you're playing a minor blues in your A.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So you got different minor scales. You got the harmonic minor. You got kind of like a natural minor, and you got like a minor seventh, which is like a Dorian, right? So it depends on what color you want that minor to be. Now, most players, like in A, here's what the scale would be. It would be A, B, C natural, D, E, quite often F sharp, and then G. So at different times, you do different things. Now, let me say this, that say the first chord, the very first chord of the minor blues, some people play that like a melodic minor, like a jazz melodic minor going up. So therefore, it's A, B, C natural, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And they play that, and then they go up a 4 to like D, and they play, like a D minor 7th, which is just, so you got these different ways of thinking of that minor, depending on what color you want the minor to be.
I encourage everybody to check out Charisma. That's awesome with the arrangements. It's just a great recording. The one album that I was listening to that really kind of, it just felt so mature and just great, and was First Flight Out, 1994. The first tune, I mean, the title track that's a Rhythm Changes, is that right?
Yeah, that's rhythm.
That's a Rhythm Changes, right? Talk about that track, actually, First Flight Out.
Yeah, well, that's it, and that's Tom Harrell on trumpet, right? Well, that was a nice day. Now I'll talk about Tom Harrell. Tom Harrell, trumpet player, is a great trumpet player, and so he's on that date, and there is symbiosis between he and myself, and so that I was enjoyable to play with him. That tune, I just wanted to kind of play, like some basically, just kind of like neo bebop. That's kind of my term, neo bebop. I mean, it's definitely, from the bebop tree, but a little different, in spots, and so that
is fast. That's a very fast.
Yeah.
tune.
That is fast, and I want it to be, first. I kind of what the title implies, First Flight Out. So it's, I wanted it to be exciting and insightful.
Let me ask you a question when it comes to playing fast. Like, how did you develop playing fast?
Well, first of all, you cut time, like we were talking earlier. So I cut the time in half. I play in 2. I pat my foot in 2. I think in 2. And then in order to play fast, you must practice fast. You must actually practice tunes and practice them, at a fast tempo. And you've got to play them. You have to. People who can play fast well play. It's not like they do it often. So it's like the repetitive doing it often, you learn how to do it. And basically, it's the name of the game is to be clean and still to play melodically, even though you're playing fast. Then you got to use rhythm, be rhythmic. And then I think the secret is actually thinking too. At that point it's so fast you can't think full for boom boom boom. It's too. You can't make your body, pat your foot full force. Ridiculous. It's too fast. So it's being able to hear halftime. That's a very important part of it.
There's a recording of you on YouTube just burning through Cherokee. It's just a great video. Cherokee is not an easy tune, especially that bridge. Back in the day, Cherokee was considered a hallmark of a good player, right? If you could get through Cherokee.
Yeah, definitely, and it still is.
It hasn't
still
changed.
Is.
It hasn't really changed.
It still is.
It still is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. They're play. It still is.
Do you have any tips on that bridge?
Well, no particular tip. I mean, here's what you do. You really have to, you have to be comfortable in all keys. Yeah, I think it's a good practice to play anything in all 12 keys, to make that a practice. So if you're playing, say, Happy Birthday, for instance, Happy Birthday to you, doodly-da-dee-da, then you're supposed to be able to do it in all keys. If you play All the Things You Are, then learn to play them in all keys. Go up a half step. And now, when you do that, that really makes you really do learn how to play in different keys, and also you're hearing the intervals. Yeah, because so when you play a tune, and you say, okay, let me go up a half step, then you're forced to use your ears to find the notes. The process of looking for the right note is a learning process in itself. There are things being learned when you are looking for the note and you find it. Now, what I mean by that is this. If you look for the minute the brain looks for something and finds it, then the wiring in the brain and the brain cells and all of those synapses that make the brain, how the brain works, all that stuff is there. You've created a circuit, and that's the value.
There's a beautiful song on that album that you wrote called Karen. And I think, quite frankly, that should be a standard because it's such a beautiful melody and great chords. And could you talk a little bit about that tune? It's such a good tune. It really should be in the real book.
Yeah, that tune, is that on the same album, on the first Light Out?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Yeah, that was written for my oldest daughter. Her name is Karen. And it's sort of, that Karen, my oldest daughter, is a very kind of a very pleasant personality person. Just kind of even and in a good mood, and just so I wanted the tune to reflect her, kind of how she is, and so so I came up with that tune.
You really have control of your triplets and your rhythmic variety and your phrasing. How long did it take you to really develop your phrasing?
I think I was kind of conscious of that even when I first started playing. I have certain, I teach, and so I have certain ways of thinking of things. Just because I teach people, and then I have to learn how to put certain things into words. And so I have a way of saying that basically, even though we are horn players, like you play guitar, I'm playing saxophone, but really we are all also drummers, except we have notes. So sometimes I practice where I'm only practicing the phrasing of things, and I don't worry about the note or the bar line. And so I have a little exercise I do myself, and I give it to students. I'll turn the metronome on, okay, a certain setting, and then I'll play it, and then I'll just play with the metronome and play the saxophone as if I'm a drummer, and meaning that I'm not concerned about what note I'm playing. I'm not concerned about a bar line. I'm not playing any particular tune. There are 12 notes in the scale, and I'm playing, any sequence of these 12 notes I want, and I'm rhythmically phrasing them any way I want, and I just practice.
Do you have a key that you follow, or is it just chromatically anything?
No, that's what I'm saying. No key. I got 12 keys. I got 12 notes. So I'm not thinking of a key or a particular scale or anything. I'm thinking chromatically, and I can sequence them any way I want. But then I pretend like, so I'm not worrying about harmony or melody. All I'm worrying about is pure rhythm, phrasing, as if I'm a drummer. So when you are a drummer, you don't have a note to speak of. So what do you have? You have rhythmic figures. So I approach it that way. That's one way to think about it. Sometimes I say, I'm just going to be in the key of C. These are the only notes I'm going to play. And then I will phrase them as if I'm a drummer. So that way you can approach music, and you can practice certain disciplines by setting certain little games that you play with yourself. And that's an interesting way to think, in a way.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It really is all rhythm at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's all rhythm. In the end, it's the last thing that has anything to say about it.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so Nick, here's how I think about it. And you're a musician, and you're an intelligent person, and you write also. Well, sometimes I explain to students, this is sort of my little concoction. It's the what, where, and when of music. Okay? What, where, and when. Those three words. So now, when we break it down, when you say the what of music means what the song is, what the chord is. Is it A minor seventh, or is it a half? Is it a diminished? That's what. All right. When is when you take the what and sequence the elements in what, and you sequence them this way, that way, this way, that way.
Are you thinking in terms of a pattern?
Yeah, in terms of sequence. Okay, let's do the what. Let's do the what of an A minor chord.
Okay,
so what is A minor? It's like, what is it? It's an A minor seventh, okay? That's the what. What is it? It's an A minor seventh, okay. Now, when, what? So if you take the when, no, not the when, but the let me see, what? Oh, where? The where part. So you take the elements in A minor. So you got, A, B, C, natural D, E. Let's say F sharp, G, A. Those are the notes. Okay. So that's what. Where are you going to sequence the notes in A minor? You got 7 notes, right? Okay, how are you going to sequence those 7 notes? Now, sequence means where are you putting them? Where are the notes in there going to be? I play E now, so what are you going to play next? Am I going to play A? Am I going to play C natural? So I'm sequencing the notes geographically, and that's where, of an A minor chord. Okay, when is the rhythm part. So really, it's where, what, when. And the last thing to say about it is the rhythm part, because that's the phrasing. So with the when, you're saying when, what, where. So then now you've got another note to play. Now you've already taken what, which is whatever the note is, and now you play it. Okay, you've done the first step of what, but you're taking all of the what, when the whats are broken up into component parts, which are all the notes in the scale. Then the minute you play 3, then sequence starts right then. It's the minute you play one note, in the thing, the minute you play 2, sequence has started. You're already taking one note, and now you've played another note, so you're already sequencing things. Something occurred first, something occurred second, and that's happening. Now, the minute you do 3, the 3 is the magic number in everything, in nature, in the universe, in everything. 3 is a very important number. Okay, because movement really starts right then. Because now, so now when you put time to what and sequence, then that is the rhythm, you see. And so what you've brought, you've taken when, which means when, what, where. When does it occur? Well, that's the minute you say when, then time is implied. Rhythm is implied. So that kind of, it's metaphoric in a sense. It's a metaphor, but it's making a kind of an abstract point, making it, it's thinking of it a certain way. And if you think about things, everything can be thought of that way. If you think of the planet Earth, okay, that's what, okay? If you, okay, let's just take the solar system, for instance. Okay, so all of the planets are the notes in a scale. So those are the whats. Where they're sequenced, what follows what, if you want to think about procession, is the sequence of the notes. So that's where. Where is Mars now in relation to the Earth? Where is it? And then when is the timing, is the rhythm part. You know what I mean? So everything sort of breaks down. You can put everything into what, where, when, because that's the three-dimensional reality in a way. That's like time and space. That's time and space and items.
When you have a sequence going, but the chord is changing to the next, like let's say, like All the Things You Are has quite a few key changes in the middle of the tune. How do you keep that sequence going as you're changing key?
Well, okay, you mean how do you keep the melodic idea
exactly
going?
Would you just change the key of the individual notes to suit the change of a chord?
Yes, you do.
Okay, and then you would stop at 3, so to speak, or change to a different idea?
No, well, you in other words, you the time and space is going. You got things happen. You got 4 bars of this, and then you got 4 bars of that, or 2 bars of this, and the harmony is changing. It's changing. You have to be playing the right notes at the right time, and the name of the game is if 10 words or less. Here's what's going on. The bar line is the moment of truth.
Yeah.
So this means this harmonically, at least in Western music. On the downbeat of the new chord that's right at the bar line, you must be on the chord tone on the downbeat. You must be on the 3rd, the 5th, or the tonic. And that's the key to improvising. No matter what you do before you get there. For instance, let's just say we're going to go to D. Okay. Now let's say we're any place. We could be any place, but we're going to D in 4 beats. And 4 beats, the new chord is a D major, say, for instance. At the downbeat of that new chord, the downbeat, in order for me to play a musical phrase that makes sense, I have to land on a downbeat on the 3rd of D or the 5th of D. And that's really the key. Players
from perhaps your generation they all consciously really tried to hit those chord tones as they go from bar to bar.
Yeah, that's how you do it. That really is the way you do it. And if you look at and analyze any kind of music at all, any music at all, if you're dealing with tonal music, Now, if you're dealing with atonal music where it's in a harmonic then that's a whole different ball game, because that has nothing to do with tonal. That could be just chromatic, and any note you hit, it doesn't have anything to do with.
It's really great when you mention the hitting, because that's really the essence of playing the changes.
Well, that's the essence of tonal. Yeah, if you're going to an A minor, in order for you, I mean, and you can look at Bach, you can look at Stravinsky, you can look at Richard Wagner. It doesn't make any difference when they go to, say, an A or D major. They're going to, the minute they hit, it's going to be on the third or the fifth or something. That's just the way it is, because that's a melodic logic, So the creation is, here's the creative aspect is this: how many ways can you do things, and you end up on the third or the fifth or the tonic, because it's how you start and what you do. Then in other words, the creation is up until that point, and then when you get to the point, so it's like the end of a sentence. It's the period of a sentence and the beginning of another sentence.
Now, there's some bebop lines, like if you're looking like at the Bud Powell or Charlie Parker, do they end not necessarily on a chord tone, or they might end a phrase like a 2 or a 6?
Well, for the most part, you can see, you don't always have to be on that, but more often than not, you are. You know what I mean? Yeah, more often than not. I mean, you can hit the end things on the 9th or the 13th. So it's not like you can't do that. But more often than not.
There's a Charlie Parker phrase where he said, there's that famous, I mean, there's one thing that's kind of sad is that we don't have much documentation of people like Charlie Parker talking about music very much. But there was one line where he was talking about Cherokee, and he said, the quote is, I think, I was playing the changes and I got bored of the changes, and one time I was playing the higher intervals of the chord and I came alive.
As a melodic line.
Right. So what does he mean by that, actually?
Well, I think he means playing the 9s, the 13s, and the 11s and playing them melodically. Playing, instead of just always starting on the third or the, just being melodically using them. But you still end up, when your bar line comes with a new chord, quite often you still end up with the 1, 3, 5 chord tones. But on your way there, you can navigate the higher what we call them, partials, or the higher intervals of the chord.
I want to ask you about a couple of your compositions that I really do enjoy.
Okay, and I want to ask, before we leave, I want to ask you a question.
Yeah,
so go ahead.
Absolutely. You can ask me anything you want. There's an album. I'll just say the name of the song if you can remember the tunes. Lynn's Grins.
Oh yeah, so I wrote that for my wife Lynn, and it's just an original. And again, I try to write a tune that fits the personality of the person. So Lynn, my wife, is a pretty happy person, and she's very positive. The glass is half full, not half empty.
And is she a classical pianist?
Yes, she's a classical pianist,
wow.
And she's really, really, really good. She's an excellent musician. So she helps me a lot. Even in my composition, she'll have ideas and she helps me a lot. I mean, she's a really good business person. I mean, she's smart, so she knows how to, she knows how to do things, especially with the computer and all that stuff, the online and the stuff. So she's marketing. She's good. She gets back to people and emails, and she's good, but she's a really very excellent musician.
What about Elizabeth? There's a tune on First Flight Out called Elizabeth.
Now that's my mom. That some of these tunes are family members. So that's a tune that I tried to capture my mom's personality, which is kind of a happy, lilting. That's a nice tune too, actually.
Yeah, no, that's a great album. I mean, it's got.
Yeah, I gotta get that, man. I don't even have these records.
You're the guy who made it. You don't have them.
Yeah, I have to get them, man. It's
funny.
So.
How about Blues for Chuck?
And Blues, now Chuck is one of my sons, and he's a drummer. And so if you notice, part of that blues is in 5/4. The melody is in 5/4, and then we solo just regular 4/4.
In your 1995 album "Come Play with Me," you did a cover of "Get Happy." I do love "Get Happy." I think it's a great tune. But there's what I like about that album is a ton of original tunes that you write: "Lonely Little Chimes," "Marionette," "Pretty Girl Blues." Talk a little bit about. Okay, let's start with "Lonely Little Chimes."
Yeah, basically that was the phone number of Louis Hayes, the drummer. I think I had occasion to call him, and the notes when you hear the notes back at you, if it's digital, you know what I mean. I'm hearing, and so I just made a tune out of it. And now why I call it lonely? I called it "Lonely Little Chimes" because it's something about the little melody to me sounded lonely, for some reason.
What about "Marionette"?
Now, "Marionette" was a tune I wrote for my youngest daughter, Camille. Now she's 26 years old now. She'll be 26 in May next month.
Is she the ballet dancer?
She's a ballet dancer, yes. And so at the time she might have been 3 or 4 years old. And she used to play with this little marionette, this little puppet. And so I wrote a tune, and I called it "Marionette" because the tune is a jumpy little tune, like what puppets look like when they're bouncing around with on the strings.
And "Pretty Girl Blues." And
that's just a blues, because blues can be many different colors. You can be happy blues, very, very sad blues. Some blues are fast, kind of like urban city blues. Some blues are real country, like or some blues are almost spiritual, And some blues are sensual, almost sexy, sensual, This blues is like pretty. It's the blues, but there's a prettiness to it, to me, harmonically, because I'm using augmented chords on it.
What about "Jumping Jacks"?
And "Jumping Jacks" is, these were tunes written for, basically, that whole CD, "Come Play With Me," is really based on the birth of my youngest child, Camille, who at that time might have been 3 or 4. So I'm very much into her. And so really the record is "Come Play With Me," because I'm the one that would play with her all the time. Because my wife would teach. She still does. She teaches all day long, teaches piano. And when I work, it's at night. So in the daytime, I'm kind of the one doing the babysitting in a way, to a great degree. And I'm the one playing with her,
What about "Funhouse"?
As a fun house is, there again, it's just a house of fun with toys and kids,
So that kind of informs the music. It's you want that.
Yeah,
fun.
that whole album is informed by her and her being a toddler. So "Come Play With Me," "Funhouse," "Marionette," all of that.
What about "Blues for Camille"? How is that blues different?
That's just a 12-bar blues, and I just wanted to play a blues, and I just named it for her. Yeah, that's no real significance, really.
Now, there's Live at the Varden Jazz Festival in 1996. There's 2 tracks I want you to just talk a little bit about: "A Tear and a Smile" and "Blues for Varden."
Okay, Varden is the name of a jazz club in Denver, and it's also the name of the club owner who used to own that club. His last name was Varden, I think. And so that, what's the other tune? "Blues for Varden." What's the other tune?
"A Tear and a Smile."
Okay, so that's on. "A Tear and a Smile," yeah. So I've recorded that a couple times. That's an original tune. "A Tear and a Smile" was a tune written that was emotionally supposed to portray, like the emotions of smiling and crying at the same time, So it's kind of a contradiction in terms to smile and cry, but there are certain human emotions that are almost you smile to keep from crying, or there's this little funny in between stages that I don't know that anyway, and it had something to do with there's a poet and a writer, a guy named Kahlil Gibran. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Kahlil Gibran. Yeah, he wrote my Beloved. He's kind of a well-known. He's an Arabic writer. He's very well known. He wrote some very great poems in him. But one is called A Tear and a Smile.
Just to close off, talk about Manhattan Nocturne, your 1997 album. The
Manhattan Nocturne, that was a tune. I composed that tune at night, pretty late at night, and it was easy it played itself. It came to me very easily. And so when I composed it, I basically had in mind, since it was night and it was a nocturne, but I had in mind New York City, like film noir, black and white movies of the 40s. In New York City at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's quiet and everybody's kind of home, and it's like a light rain in the city. I mean, so this is what I'm thinking of, and so I think that melody actually sort of captures that vibe,
And finally, I guess the last song I want to ask you about is Illusions in Blue, a tune you've recorded a couple of times.
Yeah, Illusions in Blue it's just basically a blues, but with some curveballs in it, a little bit different. I call it Illusions because it's very syncopated, and the way the beat is being manipulated is almost illusionary in a way, because things are on the upbeat, but I'm holding the notes, and they're occurring on the end of the beats, and so that's why I call it rhythmically. It's a little bit illusionary, because I'm delaying the main pulse with the beat.
I want to ask you just a fun question now. If you could play or write or jam or just play music with any musical figure before your time, could you name a couple that you would be interested in jamming with?
Bud Powell.
Why Bud Powell?
Bud Powell.
Why Bud Powell?
Oh, would you say why Bud Powell?
Yeah, why?
Oh, because I love the way he plays the piano. I love his harmony. I think especially early Bud Powell is extremely creative. His musical, the feeling that he gets, the musicality, his technique, his musical intelligence, and just everything about him. Everything.
Did you ever meet Bud Powell?
I did meet Bud Powell once. I met him a couple of times, but I played with him once in New York, and I was working with Charles Mingus, and Bud Powell was he was in New York, and he came to the club, and we played the old standard called Indiana.
Oh, yeah, back
Mingus.
home in Indiana, great tune.
Yeah, back home, yeah. And I remember Bud played, and it was great, And this was older Bud, he had his problems later on in life.
Did you ever get to chat with him about music and stuff?
Not too much, because he wasn't a guy that you could talk to that much. I think he had problems, and he wasn't a guy that could, I think I didn't really talk. I wish I had, but I was younger, and I didn't. And we're in a club, and it's not really a good time.
Did you ever meet Monk and talk to Monk?
Yeah, I did talk to Monk a little bit. He was also a little bit difficult. You don't have the normal conversation with him either, Yeah. But I could do that more with him than with Bud, though.
Right.
And I did meet Monk. Monk. I was around him a while and got a chance to sort of know him to some degree.
Can you name a musician that just really impressed you? He doesn't need to be famous or anything, but was there a person that you just really impressed you?
Well, Lonnie Hilliard, the little guy that I grew up with, impressed me a lot then. And as I listened to some of his harmonic concept was extremely creative and good and knowledgeable. Great harmony, just great knowledge of, and also he knew how to put it together. He just his phrases were connected melodically and harmonically beautifully.
What did Mingus say about you? What did he ever say to you about music, and what did he think about your playing? Did he ever tell you, Charles, I love
Well, he
your
never. I mean,
Charles, I like your playing.
he never really. Yeah, he never really kind of said that. But he said nice things about me in print sometimes. But I think he liked me, and
there's a story where you mentioned like he was paying his band, and you kind of didn't take the money.
Yes.
You didn't take the money because you felt like somebody else needed it more, and he really liked you because of that.
Right.
He really liked you, and so then from then on,
yeah,
you're like,
he liked me.
You could do no wrong.
Yeah. Right. That's exactly right. That was pretty much it. It was a benefit, and everybody else in the band took, like $5, and I just said, well, $5 is meaningless. Give the $5 to the man who needs the money. We're doing a benefit for this person to raise money for his hospital costs, help with that. So give it to him, And then when I did that, I saw his eyes tear up a little bit. And he just kind of looked at me and said, "Thanks, Charles." And then because he thought of me as being a little bit bigger as a person than the rest of the guys, I don't know if that's true, but he thought of me being like, and I'm only like 20 years old, 21. I think that impressed him a little bit, and he was like, "Wow, this is a nice young man," But so Mingus was an interesting figure too. He was quite controversial and combative, but he had a good heart, really.
If you could talk to anybody, like I give you a time machine and you could talk music with anyone. You mentioned Bud. Is there anybody else that you'd be really like fascinated to talk to or meet or just to, other than of course like Charlie Parker, and Dizzy? Yeah,
I would like to talk with people like, they're dead now, but people like Stravinsky or something, or Bartok, if I could push a button,
Yeah.
And let me see. A couple other people.
Yeah, who's classical?
Let me think for a minute.
Because you compose classical music you actually write for ballets. So who are your favorite classical influences when it comes to your writing?
Well, I like Bartok. I like Stravinsky and.
What is it about Bartok that you like?
I like the way harmonically, and I like his melodies, and plus his orchestration. I like certain. I think
any piece that you
the Mandarin Suite. I love it. Mandarin Suite. That's one. Concerto for orchestra. Bartok's Concerto for.
And Stravinsky, what kind of pieces do you like from Stravinsky?
Oh, I like everything. Rites of Spring.
Yeah.
Petrushka. What's the other one? You got the Rites of Spring and a Firebird.
Firebird, yeah.
Yeah, Firebird Suite. I like him a lot. But I also like Wagner. A certain Wagner. I like him too, actually.
The operas? Do you like opera?
Yeah, some of it. Yeah. I like certain. I like Wagner's operas pretty much. I like of course Bach is. I love him, and I also like Richard. I like not Richard Bach, but Richard.
Richard Strauss, is that right?
Yes. That. Wait a minute. One is the Waltz guy, right?
Yeah, one. Yeah, that's Johann Strauss.
Yeah. Okay. No, Richard Strauss. The other one.
Is there any? Which piece of Richard Strauss do you like?
Let me. I think is it Alpine? Wait a minute. Yeah. I like probably all of them, but I do remember that. I just remember the name of that one.
That's right, the Alpine. So you got it. That's it.
I like Mussorgsky too. I like him. Pictures of an exhibition.
Yeah.
Mussorgsky. I like him too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like Prokofiev also.
Dr. McPherson, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You're one of the top guys when it comes to playing. I personally love bebop, and I think you're one of the guys who really plays it really well. And you're so.
Well, let me add. I wanted a question to ask.
Go ahead.
Now. Okay, so when you first came, like Berkeley, you were more like a more rock person, like rock and roll type guy, a popular music.
Yeah, I was. My dad was my parents were kind of influenced by the Beatles and Bob Dylan and that kind of thing. Okay. And then when I came to music college, I learned about Charlie Parker. Pretty late, but I heard about it and I said, "Wow, this is great." I mean, this is. I didn't know virtuosity at this level. Then I heard bebop and I loved it. But I only really got into Bud Powell and Charlie Parker and Barry Harris, which led me to you later on near the end afterwards later. Because I think in Berkeley there's a big there's a lot of Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea. It's Miles Davis and up. and there's a lot of emphasis on that. But I kind of was, after a while, I actually, personally speaking, I didn't really dig it so much. I mean, I don't really like it as much as I like Charlie Parker and Bud Powell.
Okay, well then, let me tell you something. You are a very smart man because that's interesting to me. Now, before you heard Bird, I mean, you heard jazz by other people, right?
Exactly, that's right.
Right. So I mean, Bird wasn't the first jazz person you heard. You heard other players before Bird. Okay. Now, so the thing is, when you finally heard Charlie Parker, a light bulb went off in your head. Something let you know that, oh, wait a minute, now I'm hearing something that I haven't heard. This is the real thing right here.
The lines are so beautiful. The rhythm is so gripping. When I listen to people who are newer, like Miles and stuff, they kind of got it, and it was kind of touching on it. But I just felt like Bird and Bud and Dizzy, they really hit you in the face. Like really, it felt like as it got newer, it kind of watered down a little bit.
Yeah, it's exactly right. You are exactly right. You're exactly right. It is watered down. That's it. Now, when you said you listen to Miles, you listen to Trent, you listen to other people, and they're kind of doing it. That's exactly right. They're kind of doing it because they come from that. But they don't have what he had, though. See, the reason why he has more of it, this is why he is Bird, Charlie Parker, because he has more of that than they do. And that more of it is the great thing of what that is, the rhythm and the melodic line. Just better, man.
It feels like every solo, like you can go back to his young solos when he's with Jay McShann, and you want to listen to that, and you want to listen to his older stuff, you want to listen to everything. It feels like you could listen to every period of his life and have a good time.
Yeah, and there's no date on it.
Exactly, yeah.
It's dateless. It's just like, look, man, there's no date. This is as great now as it was then.
My only regret is that the recording fidelity in the 40s wasn't as good as and just a decade later in the 50s we got a lot better. But yeah, it's a shame because if imagine getting Bird on like a really great sound system.
Oh man. Oh man. Yeah, great.
Dr. McPherson, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you had a good time.
I did. Very good time. Very nice.
It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. And I'd certainly like to come there and play, like maybe do a tour one day there.
That would be wonderful. Maybe we can organize that.
Yeah, if you know any promoters that are good and that are solid, then you can get in touch with my website, Lynn, and we can maybe do something. I could even either bring a band over there or either use like a piano player already over there or something.
It's such an honor to talk to you, and thank you again, and have a great rest of the day.
All right, thank you so much. Bye-bye.